Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Our panelists are already lined up, so let's convene today's summit. And as always, before we introduce today's topics, allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists for this evening from the FSN studios in Washington, D.C., Dr. Omékongo Dibinga, Professor of Intercultural Communication at the American University. From Woodlands, Texas, David Katz, CEO of Global Security Group, former federal agent at the DEA. And from Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. John Eaves, former chairman at Fulton County. Hello, all gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time this evening. So in the aftermath of yet another fatal shooting of an unarmed black man, Jayland Walker, and we will discuss this fact too later on in the debate. Has anything changed for the Black Lives Matters movement, and will violent protests help it, or rather alienate people from supporting the cause? Let's take a closer look and pick up the debate right after.
Early on June 27, Jayland Walker was pulled over by the police for an unspecified traffic violation. He did not survive the encounter. Body cam footage released a few days after the incident showed an unarmed Walker being hit by a spray of 60 bullets from officers. Whilst details are still unclear about the background to the shooting, protests erupted in his home city of Akron, Ohio, in scenes that bring back a sense of deja vu from the summer of 2 years ago, where protests erupted worldwide following the killing of George Floyd, as well as the deaths of Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, Tamir Rice, and many, many more. But if these deaths keep on happening, are all of these protests in vain? Will violent protests help their cause, or will it turn people away? Has anything changed for the Black Lives Matter movement since 2020?
So, gentlemen, before we engage in a conversation, let's kickstart this debate by a round of 30 seconds each. Has anything changed for the Black Lives Matter movement since 2020? Dr. Dibinga, please take the lead.
Well, first of all, much indeed has changed. I think that people focus too much on some activities that may happen at rallies, but we are seeing more increased representation in executive spaces. We are seeing more diverse curricula in our schools. We are seeing some areas where there's community interactions as it relates to police. And so also in terms of issues relating to representation in the media. So there have indeed been changes, and more needs to be done.
And we will, of course, pick up on all of that a bit later. Mr. Katz, please, your take.
And by the way, I can't see the screen for some reason. But anyway, I think the Black Lives Matter movement would be tremendously served if, at a leadership level, whatever negative things happen at rallies were denounced, with chants of fry the police like bacon, or property damage, rioting, things like that, because there are a lot of people who are, without any doubt, turned off by that reaction, and frankly it distracts from the issue, which is, in a particular specific instance, that the police act inappropriately.
Interesting. And last but definitely not least, Dr. Eaves, your stance?
Well, I think we made baby steps. I think we have made some progress here in this country in terms of diversity and representation, particularly for Black people. But at the end of the day, I'm a Black man, and I'm also the father of Black children. And I'm very sick and tired of seeing Black men like this man killed this week, unarmed. And so, as Femi Lou Hamer once said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yes, definitely. And on that note, let's please feel free to interact from this point onwards. Is the debate, gentlemen, is over the police use of force, or police use of force vis-a-vis the African American community? Dr. Eaves.
Well, the first thing I would like to say is that when we talk about leadership of Black Lives Matter condemning violence, it actually happens. It happens on a regular basis. I actually know some of the founders of Black Lives Matter, and so I'm speaking from personal experience. I've seen many condemn the violence. As it relates to your question about the issue of the violence with the police, it's an issue of violence with the police, but if you want to change the issue, you got to target the group that is disproportionately affected, and that is African American people. And so we have to look at what's happening. We have to look at issues issues such as members of neo-Nazi organizations and racists that have been known by the FBI to be infiltrating police departments as well as the military. And we have to look at issues like that in order to root these out, because there has to be a particular reason why black people are being targeted the most. Another example, we see police departments using pictures of black men in their targeting practices. And so more work needs to be done. But if you hit the people who are suffering the most, you create policies that help stop police violence against all groups of people.
But Dr. Eaves, the battle, please. Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. I've been a law enforcement trainer for, I don't know, 30 some odd years. I have never once seen an African-American photograph, picture, target being used in training, ever. Does it happen? Maybe it has.
The story just came out last week, and the police chief said he's going to take it. The story's out.
Okay.
Sure, but let it be recent.
Thank you. So what I think is important is that when we look at an issue, we have to look at the totality of circumstances. And I have said when unarmed black men or unarmed white men have been shot by police, I denounce it. But we have to take this story back a little bit, because you didn't report this at all. You didn't report that we have a confirmation of a muzzle flash occurring from inside the Walker car. And we know it was a gun. How do we know? We received because the weapon was retrieved. The empty shell casing was retrieved. So we have a little bit of a different tale when you look at the whole circumstance. We have a shot fired at pursuing police. We have an encounter which apparently, at least at one point, the officers tried to deploy a taser. Now, according to, and I've seen they're very grainy photos. I have not been able to see enhanced photos yet. We see what appears to be Mr. Walker turning and reaching to the waistband. In that case, you have justification. If it's not, it's not a justified shooting. But just to blanketly start the reporting, but we have an unarmed black man who was shot. Yeah. Well, let's get the whole picture told.
But, well, you know what, until the details get a bit less blurry, let's perhaps look at what could be seen as glass half full police handling of this situation, the aftermath, that is, this press conference. We've seen those body cam documentations. We've seen the 8 officers being sent on an unpaid leave. Can we see it as progress to an extent? Again, the police handling of the aftermath of the situation?
Well, let me jump in.
Please.
There's something called implicit bias. And I can't speak to whether or not there are pictures within a police precinct of black men or white men, et cetera. But there is something called implicit bias. And I believe that implicit bias is at work, not only within law enforcement, but in many other aspects of American life. And so when you look at the proportion of black men who have violent, deadly encounters with police, the percentage is higher for black people than other people in the United States. And I think a lot of that is attributable to what's called implicit bias. It's something that's...
May I ask a question?
Please, Mr. Katz.
Do you know that the odds of an officer being shot to death by an African American percentage-wise is a lot higher than us? So we have statistics, but that what you just said is a very unfair one.
I got statistics too, by the way, when you get a chance.
Wait, hang on. Is there racism?
I got stats too when you get a chance.
But rather than saying that, why don't you just, in this case, can you do me a favor? If you were that officer, would your actions have been different? I think it might. By the way, in this case, I think my actions would have been different. But we have to say is, if you were out there that day, and if someone who had just fired a shot at you reached to their waistband and you know there's a gun involved, what action would you take? Now, I would say, just based on my training and experience, the chase might have been tactically inappropriate. The fact that 60 rounds apparently was fired, that's outrageous. That's a training issue. Those things need to be addressed. But just to say, well, it's an unarmed black man and racism is involved, maybe it was, but I don't know that. And frankly, neither do you.
Dr.
Well, I'm going to stand by what I said.
So when we talk about statistics, I'm sorry, Dr. Eaves. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You're too polite, gentlemen. Dr. Eaves, please finish.
So we have to look at over the last 5 years, we have a situation where over over 400 people have been killed in traffic stops by officers. When you look at the situation with Jalen, we have a situation where, can we talk about the fact that he was shot at over 60 times because there were 60 bullets in his body, and when he was brought out of the ambulance, he was handcuffed with his hands behind him. Is that police training? I mean, we say in their statement that is standard operating procedure. I agree with them, because that has been standard operating procedure for black people for far too long. From Amadou Diallo, the list goes on and on.
That's complete. That you're missing the point. Was the gun in the car? Yes. I mean, I implore you, because I think
it wasn't on him when he was slaughtered and turned into mincemeat. It was not on him when he was turned into mincemeat.
You see, when you do that, you're not focusing on the issue. But the issue number one is you have a car stop. You have a subject who fires a round. Do you think that action changed the dynamic, or would you maintain that if he had just pulled over, here's my license and registration, they say you have a tail light out, is he still getting shot to death? If you say yes, I certainly hope that's not the way you think.
What I know is that Dylan Roof is still alive. I know that the shooter in Highland Park, Chicago, is still alive. I know that there's so many issues where white people who are armed to the teeth end up surviving. Yeah, but he's alive. He's alive. There's a big difference. And an unarmed black man is seen as more dangerous than an armed to the teeth white man. We got to talk about that. Colorado shooting.
That's just absurd. That's absurd. I'm sorry.
Proportionality. Proportionality. You want to talk statistics?
He's still alive.
Look at the statistics.
Sorry?
Look at the statistics. I'm talking about numbers. You want to talk stats? Let's talk numbers.
Okay. Yeah, but okay. You didn't answer the question. If that car stop did not involve the shooting and the flight of Mr. Walker, are you suggesting those officers would have shot him? I'm trying to understand what your dynamic is. Because
to answer your question,
he fired a shot.
Answer your question directly. To answer your question directly, what's the justification? I do believe that people should not flee the police.
Hold on.
Yes, gentlemen, it's
but that doesn't justify the response.
Yeah.
And what's the rationale?
I do believe that people should not flee the police.
I'm trying to hear too. I'm sorry, I can't see you guys, so I don't know who's...
Yeah, Dr. Eaves, please, we have a minute left to wrap up this part of the debate. We'll obviously continue in a second, but your thoughts on what we've just heard.
No, again, I just think that there's something called implicit bias. I mean, I think that people do act, their actions are sometimes dictated what's subconscious or underneath the surface. And implicit bias training is often recommended for law enforcement. I think is certainly needed, and I think that this was a case where folks were shooting a black man, and they may not have shot a white man the way that they shot this particular black person.
Yes.
More white men are shot than black men, right? You know that, right?
Now we're talking about percentage-wise. So black people are 13% of the American population.
Of the population. Come on now, see, 13% of the I'm sorry, Dr. Eaves, you were responding to that. You hit it. Go ahead.
50% of the homicides perpetrated in this country are perpetrated by African Americans. It's a statistical imbalance.
Well, gentlemen, hopefully I will perform better as moderator so we can get all your input after the break, as we have so much more to unpack. Thank you very much for your thoughts. You're staying with us. We're taking a short break, but continuing this fascinating debate right after, so don't go anywhere. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for staying with us.